Welcome back to Arise News Hour. I'm Charles Anyegolu in London. Here are the latest developments in the Ukraine war. Russia says it's achieved the main target of phase one of what it calls its special operation in Ukraine. And the emphasis is on securing the Donbass region in the southeast of the country, dominated by pro-Russian separatists. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden has been visiting Poland today as he wraps up his trip in Europe. Now, the biggest NATO war exercise since the end of the Second World War has been underway in the Arctic this week. Now, more than ever, it's being seen as important for all the Nordic countries. Norway designs its so-called Exercise Cold Response to get NATO troops used to fighting together in extreme cold. Sweden and Finland are not NATO members, but both countries have sent troops north for the maneuvers. Now, European nations continue to debate the best way to assist Ukraine, but at the same time, they're increasingly anxious to protect their economies rather, from surging energy prices. Susi Dennison is the director of the European Power Programme at the European Council on Foreign Relations. She's an expert on foreign policy and security questions across Europe. And I began by asking her how long recent European unity might last.
Well, I think that what we've seen in recent weeks since Russia's invasion of Ukraine is not only a step change in the number and the intensity of these discussions at European level, but also a step change in the willingness of European leaders to put in place policy measures as part of a response to this war. It's very clear that around the different capitals of the EU there is a realization that if we've ended up in this situation where Putin felt able to invade Ukraine in this way, it was because he had a sense that there wouldn't be a reaction from the European side, at least to the level that we've seen. We've had an unprecedented package of economic sanctions put in place, which are beginning to really bite in the Russian context. We've had a willingness from a number of European capitals, including Berlin, Stockholm, to send lethal aid and weapons to the Ukrainian people as part of their resistance effort. And you know, these moves throw aside decades of commitment to neutrality, particularly in the case of Sweden, and to not sending weapons to war contexts in the case of Germany. So I think that what is at stake here is Europe's ability to sustain this type of show of power to Putin, and not just through what could end up being a much longer conflict than anticipated in the early weeks, but also through a period which is going to become increasingly economically difficult for Europeans as we feel the effects of the sanctions that we've put in place.
Talking about the message, I mean, we're seeing all these lines being drawn in the sand by NATO, the EU, the US, and warnings to Vladimir Putin not to cross the borders of NATO. I mean, is Mr. Putin paying any attention at all? And beyond the rhetoric, I mean, how would Europe back up these threats if it had to? Because, I mean, they clearly don't want to widen the scope of this conflict.
No, I think you're absolutely right that there is a lot of concern at both European and US level about the prospect of this becoming a Russian-NATO conflict. And a lot of concern about pushing it to that point in terms of the Western response. But I think there is also a conversation that's going on about what is our reaction when that red line is crossed, and if our red line is indeed before crossing into NATO borders, if it is use of chemical weapons or even nuclear weapons, what is our response at that stage?